Okay, let's get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session, speaker session. So today we'll be exploring the influence of artificial intelligence, AI on cancer. So we're particularly focused on Ask Ellyn. So we do have Ellyn with us. She'll be speaking about her AI. Okay, so before we get into the actual content of today's session, I'd just like to hear a little bit about Natasha, who's with us, and Ellyn. So just give us your name, a little bit of a background about yourself, just a brief background. Let us know, Natasha, if you're a caregiver or a patient. And since winter is coming up, I just wanted to know what your favorite activities are during the winter season.
All right, so my name is Natasha Batchelor. So my background is I'm actually a mammographer by trade and currently work as a breast imaging supervisor, so with breast cancer patients and that type of stuff. So I'm neither a caregiver or a patient,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
work with breast cancer patients.
Great. Great.
Um, and my favorite activity to do in the winter is I snowboard.
Hey, snowboarding. That's also my favorite. Great. And Ellyn, just give if you would like to give a brief background about yourself and just your favorite activities
Good thing.
during the
Good
season.
thing. Yeah. Natasha, it's really, really nice to hear you,
Yeah.
to connect. So my name is Ellyn Winters-Robinson. My background is I am a marketer and a mom and fairly recently a grandmother for the first time. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in March of 2022. So this is all a fairly recent journey for me. I'll get technical because Natasha's on the call. I had multifocal breast cancer, the left breast. I had 3 tumors, one of which turned out to be after surgery 4.5 centimeters. Amazing, given I had a unremarkable mammogram, routine mammogram in 2019, but so be it. Ended up having a double mastectomy to aesthetic flat closure. And then I, all the way along looked good, but once we got to pathology, there was microscopic doses or traces of cancer in my lymph nodes. And so I ended up with 12 weeks of chemotherapy and then 15 rounds of radiation, which I finished. I had my 1-year end of treatment anniversary last week. And my favorite activity during the winter season, despite my last name, Winters, I'm not really a fan of the snow. So I'm going to say flying south. How's that?
Flying south, flying to the warmer regions.
Yeah, exactly. Escaping winter.
That's definitely the best activity.
It's great. It's great to hear. Maybe some indoor activities during the winter. Don't like to go out, just something inside the house.
Yeah, drinking hot toddies. How's that?
Okay, great. So thank you for those introductions, and so we'll get started with the content. Just a brief introduction about today's topic. So we'll be just talking about artificial intelligence, AI, and how the influence it has on cancer. And then I can then introduce Ellyn, who will be talking about her software, Ask Ellyn, and how it can be used to help patients and caregivers. Okay, so artificial intelligence, AI, is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, especially computer systems. So specific applications of AI include expert systems, natural language processing, speech recognition, and machine voice, where machines learn how to communicate with humans, and they take in a lot of information and respond accordingly. So in general, AI systems work by ingesting large amounts of labeled data, right? Analyzing the data for correlations and patterns, and using these patterns to make predictions about future states. AI is important for its potential change for how we live, work, and play. So in a number of areas, AI can perform tasks much better than humans, particularly when it comes to repetitive, detail-oriented tasks, such as analyzing large numbers of documents to ensure relevant fields are filled properly. And they're also very quick, and they produce relatively few errors compared to humans. So some of the advantages, as you can see listed on the slide for AI, include reduced time for tasks. right? So AI is able to analyze big data sets really quickly, and they generate results very quickly as well. It increases productivity. It delivers consistent results. So the best AI translation, for example, deliver high levels of consistency, offering businesses the ability to kind of reach customers in multiple languages as well. Okay, and it can also improve customer satisfaction. So through personalized care, so AI can personalize content, messaging, ads, recommendations, and websites to individual customers. And then another really clear benefit for AI software and programs is that they're available 24/7. So any kind of care you're looking for, any kind of questions you need to be answered, you can ask an AI program software, and they're available 24/7, as they don't need sleep or any kind of breaks. Okay, so just a brief introduction about AI, what AI is. So we'll move on to just sharing some experiences with Natasha. So you did mention, Natasha, you're not a patient, you're not a caregiver, but I just wanted to know, are you familiar with any AI programs that you use for example, for yourself or for patients for care and treatment?
Nope.
Oh,
We just lost her.
I think we lost her. It's okay.
Just answering on her behalf, it's very interesting because right now is the one of the biggest trade shows in the world for imaging, medical imaging. So a lot of breast radiologists are there right now, and it's called RSNA. And AI is the topic at the conference this year. And where I think we're seeing AI in breast health most predominantly right now is really for enhancing, and there's been quite a bit of news coverage around this, for enhancing imagery. So it applied, and all the big players of mammography machines are announcing AI workflows that are really about enhancing that imagery and giving the radiologists essentially superpowers in terms of spotting earlier. So there's been a lot of talk about that, in particular in the healthcare space.
Wow, really interesting. Yeah, Natasha, you're back, I think. Yeah. So I'll just asking some questions, a few questions to Natasha, who's joined us here. So Natasha, are you familiar with any AI programs that you used in the past that benefited you and benefited the patients for healthcare?
So actually, I have never.
Okay.
This is the first one I've heard about. So.
Well, I was just saying, Natasha, that I'm watching what's happening at RSNA this week down in Chicago, and all of the big players from GE to Canon to AGFA are all announcing AI assisted workflows for breast imaging. So so it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, I'm starting to see it. I'm not at the RSNA this year because I'm on maternity leave. So I have been seeing it in my LinkedIn, a lot of the vendors posting it for sure.
Yeah, AI is emerging technology. It's like a new kind of thing coming out. And it has a pretty great potential for supporting patients and caregivers. Another question, Natasha, which kind of resources or methods, let's say, do kind of patients use to find more information about their treatment?
I would say, sorry, hold on, let me just reset something. Give me 1 second.
I would say probably, honestly, it's probably more likely like internet, like Cancer Care, Canadian Cancer Society. Is probably one of their major resources, but I'm not too sure.
Okay, so that's like a common resource that patients use.
That would probably be the most likely one. And then I know in our departments we have like a nurse navigator that they can use for support as well. So it'd probably be a combination of those resources would be my best guesstimate.
Okay, right. And I probably assume that there are like pamphlets and posters available over there too for more information.
Exactly.
patients to use as well. Okay, great, great. Okay, so thanks for sharing, Natasha, a little bit about the information from your side. So we'll get into the presentation by Ellyn. So Ellyn, our guest speaker here. So can you speak a little bit about yourself, about your background? Just give a little bit more detail about yourself, and let us know what is Ask Ellyn, right? And how was it created? Just some more details about that. And if you can give a brief demonstration on Ask Ellyn, how to use it, and you can share your screen during that time as well.
Okay, you bet. And actually, your question to Natasha was very on point, because as someone who's been recently through the patient experience and on the other side of the healthcare system, part of why I went down this path and have created what I've created is because of the gaps that I saw. So when you're first diagnosed, there's a lot of piecing together of information, and Google is not necessarily your friend. And so,
Right.
and what happens is women, when they're diagnosed, will, join support groups online. And so there's, sort of peer-to-peer kind of conversations that go on. You do get the pamphlets, and there's information, and there's books out there and that sort of thing, but you're really, to a certain extent, left on your own to kind of parse it together and pull what's right information for you at that particular point in time on your journey. Because you can actually, too much information too soon is a very daunting and can be very scary.
Right.
And, I joined some Facebook groups, and, immediately was sort of greeted with, you've got this. And I felt, very encouraged. And then things got dark pretty fast. Like you were going through a trauma yourself, and you were actually pulled into some other people's traumatic experiences. And that's not easy. And I actually had to pull out of those groups. So that's just my own personal experience from the patient side of things. And I tell that because it does have a bearing. So when I threw myself very much into my diagnosis and wanted to know as much as I could, because that's just who I am. And I also wanted to make sure that I was on a very solid footing with the doctors, and that I understood my diagnosis and how to advocate for myself in the best possible way. Because I think it's very possible when you're a patient, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because I think the healthcare system is fantastic and I had great care, but you can be easily victimized in that if you're not speaking up for yourself, and if you are not informed, or you haven't done your own homework on the kinds of decisions that you need to make when you're diagnosed with breast cancer, and you have to make some pretty big life decisions pretty fast, it's easy to get sort of pulled down a pathway because you don't know that there's anything different, right? And
Right.
so that was, part of my intention when I sort of got into this experience, was I decided to write a book. That's where things started. I wrote a book, and it's called Flat Please, and it's on Amazon, and it's doing quite well. And my idea was I wanted to tell a very simple story about a woman that was on a healthcare journey, on the breast cancer journey, and tell it in a very relatable way. But then in each chapter, wherever I was on the journey, there's additional resources that I knew to be helpful and good information. So, for example, if I was having a biopsy in the book, there would be some information about what does a biopsy look like and what to expect, that sort of thing. And so that's where things all started. But I've worked for the last 30 years in tech. I actually work as a mentor at the Waterloo Accelerator Center. And so I've always been around startups and around tech. And it was really a chance encounter. Ask Ellyn was sort of the origins of it was really a chance encounter with another tech founder. It was very inquisitive about my breast cancer diagnosis and the book that I had written. And he and his friends had embarked upon a venture that really was, they wanted to look at using AI for good. So there's a lot of fear around artificial intelligence out there. Is it going to take people's jobs, and is it going to replace things, and is it going to run the world and blow things up, and whatever things are out there. But we do believe as a team that there are places where artificial intelligence can be deployed in a way that is extremely positive and enhances humanity. And so we believe that Ask Ellyn is a very shining example of that. And so within a matter of 3 weeks after they got their hands on my book, they actually had an early version of Ask Ellyn up and running. The way AI works is it's a mathematical model, and that model has to be trained on something. It has to have some data that it can learn from. And so my book was the learning model. And we established some rules in creating her once we kind of got her up and running. One was that she had to be always empathetic and never dismissive, because we never know how somebody's going to approach her and in what mental state they're at or at what stage of the journey they're on. So it was really important that Ask Ellyn understand and be able to perceive that someone is happy or sad or angry or elated, or you name it, that she understand even the tone of language and the level of maturity of that language, so that she can adjust and answer accordingly. And I'll demonstrate this. So she can actually talk to a child, for example. I wanted Ask Ellyn to be available not only and useful not only to the person that's going through a diagnosis, but also their family members, because for every person that is diagnosed, there's probably 10 other people in their universe, from spouses to children to family and friends. And anybody that's been on the cancer journey usually has a story about that person that either ghosted them or because they got all awkward about what that person was going through, or said just the absolute wrong thing. Like that happens all the time. And you're worried that the people that are surrounding and trying to help this person can't fathom and can't understand and can't empathize with what the person that's diagnosed is going through. And then finally, it was very important to us, essential to us, that Ask Ellyn not dispense medical advice. I am very medical system friendly. I did everything my doctors asked of me, and was a good, dutiful patient. And I have immense respect for the doctors and the nurses and the, breast radiologists and radiation techs that are out there in this world and that are working with us. And so it was really important that she stay in her swim lane. And her role is really to be that companion that is there to provide. So think of her as, the most understanding, non-judgmental friend that you can turn to, that also has a really good sense of common sense and knowledge. And so that's really what her job is. And in the healthcare industry, they call it patient-to-patient supportive care. And that currently exists through organizations like HopeSpring or Wellspring or Canadian Cancer Society or Gilda's Club, where, cancer patients get together and we, go off on retreats and we talk to each other, or there's a mentorship program where one cancer patient talks to another, but that's difficult to scale, right? And there's still bias and still judgment in there. And it's still possible that even with all of the training in the world, one patient might say to another, yeah, take an Advil for that and cause an adverse reaction. So anyway, so that just gives you sort of the sense of Ask Ellyn. I'm just going to stop there and ask whether there's any questions at this point before I jump into a demo.
No questions from me yet.
Awesome. Thanks, Natasha. All right. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go from the real Ellyn to my little digital twin. Okay, here she is.
You can share it. Yep.
So it's a very simple interface. Anybody who's ever used ChatGPT or any of those tools that are out there in the AI world now, she's built on OpenAI and ChatGPT. And so we take advantage of all those underlying technologies and all their capabilities. And as that ability advances and matures, she's only going to get better and better. So there's a link to my book. There's a little FAQ and a contact form, and we introduce her here. And we may make some interface changes in time, but the idea is really it's a chat bot is really what she is. But she doesn't behave or talk like any chatbot that I've ever used, which tends to be kind of a bit artificial. So what I like to do is I just like to open it up to, because I never know what she's going to say. She's just like me. She's very surprising and never will answer the same question twice the same. So I like to open it up and see, are there some questions you might, so if you thought of yourself as being a person that's been newly diagnosed or someone in your life that has been diagnosed with breast cancer, what questions might roll through your mind? Let's ask her a question.
Sorry, just to before we continue, did you share the screen?
Yeah, I should be.
Oh, because I can't see the
Oh,
screen.
my
Maybe
screen
try to share it again.
sharing. Yeah, my screen is, it says its screen is loading. Huh.
Hmm.
Okay.
I did enable you to share it, so you can do that.
Why is it? New share. Never had this happen before.
Okay, you're good. Yeah.
Oh, is it okay? Good. Phew. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. So let's ask her a question. Anybody want to go first? Come on, boys.
Maybe you can ask, what are some treatments for breast cancer?
So she'll always start by sort of leading with empathy, and then she'll incorporate some lived experience, and then she'll end on a supportive note. I think she's going to have a lot to say on this one. I have a feeling she's
Oh yeah.
right now. Oh, we're having a little bit of issue here. Hang on. Let's ask that again. It is technology, and sometimes if OpenAI is acting up at all, sometimes it's just a matter of asking. Oh, there we go.
Hmm.
So she's basically just told you the story that I just told you.
Right. Really interesting. Giving a very detailed response.
Oh yeah, she's very detailed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, very chatty. And then she always incorporates links as well. She's included. So these are links she doesn't go out and search the internet. These are links that I have provided to her.
Right.
And I'm just chuckling here because on the first day of my radiation, which happened to fall on Halloween, I wore a skeleton t-shirt to my radiation appointment. I thought I have a black sense of humor, and I thought it would be kind of funny to wear a skeleton t-shirt. So she's included a link to the skeleton t-shirt here. But I always do recommend Dr. Susan Love's breast book. And so she's included some
Great.
questions here. Okay, do we want to try a different question?
If it was me, my question would be, what is the survival rate?
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, that's a little shorter of a question that she's answered. So she's given some accurate detail about survival rates, but she does caution that, that's not a one size fits all. And then she talks about, how I felt about, it really does make you stop and think about, what your own mortality looks like and some of those concerns. And then she's given a link to the actual stats so that you can go in and dig on it. Let me just demo a couple of things myself. Actually, Nohelia, do you want to ask a question?
I would say my question would be, What are the side effects and what's the best way to overcome those side effects? Because that's one question I'm always asked.
Side effects of what?
Treatments, like for example, chemotherapy, radiation.
Okay. Let's just get a little bit specific here. Chemotherapy and how do I, just to keep her a little bit more tight and short. Yeah, it's a big fear, right? Everybody has that.
Yeah, it's the number one question I always get.
Yep. So we can't prevent someone from coming and asking a very medical question of her, but she should always, again, speak to it from a lived experience perspective, and then point you back to your own doctor. So, you know, for example, if I asked her a question about taking vitamin C during chemotherapy, she will say, you really should talk to your doctor about that, right? So she's not going to dispense any medical advice. But again, she's sort of broken it down, you know, sort of acknowledging that it's a tough journey to be on. And then, you know, goes through some of the symptoms, then talks about my own experience. I did wear the little oven mitts and frozen socks, you know, to stave off neuropathy. And then I'm a big proponent in a healthy lifestyle and exercise. And so, you know, that's something that, because that's very authentic to me, she's always going to recommend that exercise. And we know that there's good science that shows that exercise during any kind of this journey is a good thing. And then, you know, so she's talked about that. And then again, she kind of, you know, points people back to their healthcare resource, and will end with a little supportive note. She'll never say, "You've got this," because I can't stand that phrase. I actually literally trained that out of the model, because it's a very common phrase that we hear a lot as patients. And it's not one that resonates with me. So she'll never say, "You got this." I'm going to show you a couple other things. I'm going to show you more from a support person's perspective, like a family member or something. How I am finding that as we put her out there into the world, that the men of the world are actually using her quite a bit, that they find it very, very helpful, because she's kind of a safe place to ask these questions and to learn. So she's been very reassuring in saying, "Wow, this is really great that you're really asking this question." She talks about the emotional support and what the woman in your life maybe needs right now, and then suggests attending medical appointments, and then helping out around the house, and also giving her that emotional support to know that she, you know, is feeling loved and cherished. And she's providing resources. I made sure that this was, you know, because I mean, it's very, very traumatic for men to have to support their wives through this. And then she's actually giving him some encouragement to say, take care of yourself as well, that you're just as scared as she is. And so it's okay to get help. I'll show you a couple other things. I want to show you, the story was that the developer of Ask Ellyn, a very sad story, but a couple of weeks before he started working on her, he lost his mother in a car accident. And he had to tell his 4-year-old daughter that her grandmother was not going to come home anymore. And so it was very important to him as he built this, that Ask Ellyn understand the language of a child, and that she be able to speak to a child. So obviously a child's not going to use this AI, but a child might come and ask a parent a question. And that parent can then go to Ask Ellyn to be essentially a life coach in how to respond. So this is one that always kind of makes people get a little bit emotional. But sorry, Natasha, I know you're on maternity leave. I apologize to the young mother in the room, but So she will actually understand that that's because of the way that this is phrased. She will understand that this is a child talking, and she will now respond as if she is a parent speaking to that child. So it's just all about emotional comfort, right? So, and the last thing I want to show is that, again, thank you, the power of ChatGPT and OpenAI, but Ask Ellyn is fully multilingual. She speaks every language, from both traditional and casual Persian. I didn't realize there were two different ones, but there are, to Bengali, to Punjabi, to Russian, Serbian, Greek, Italian. She speaks every language. I think the only one I've tried that she doesn't speak well is Klingon. But she will detect when someone is speaking in a language, and she will then respond in that language accordingly. So where that's become really incredibly important, as I understand it now, is people that are not English speaking are additionally challenged in navigating the healthcare system. It's hard enough when you're an English speaking person and well educated to know what the doctors are saying to you, and to understand the scientific and to be able to come to terms with that. But to do that when you don't speak English as a second language, or you're working through a translator or a family friend. And then the other thing that I've learned, and this was eye-opening for me as a middle-aged white woman, is that there are many, many individuals of traditional cultural backgrounds for whom breast cancer continues to be a very shameful diagnosis, to the point where they're discouraged to even talk about it in immediate family circles. So either for religious reasons or cultural reasons, these women are very, very alone on their journey. And that broke my heart to think that. And so I see Ask Ellyn as being an important companion, again, on a journey to be able to help translate and to prepare better in your own native language, but also to find comfort when there's nowhere else to turn. And so I just want to show you, this is, I just have in my hip pocket, I have Mandarin. Oh, nope, sorry. I dismissed that. Hang on. I'm just going to go to my translated phrases for a second. Sorry, I had it in my hip pocket, but I lost it. Bear with me while I scurry around here. Actually, we can pick a language. I've got a whole bunch of them here, but this is Mandarin. So this is the phrase. So going to start radiation soon, so nervous, any suggestions to prepare myself? And that was a question that a real woman asked in a real group, and I stole it. So here I've translated it into Mandarin. And she's now responding in Mandarin. And we have, I obviously don't speak any of these languages, so I have the privilege of having many friends who are native speakers in different languages, and so I've, had them QA it by reading these responses, and the translation is very good. It's very authentic, and not awkward as some translations can be, and so that's. So I see this as being, and there's a lot of excitement. We're just getting started. She was launched to market October the 26th, getting some very, very, I'll say surprising to me. I didn't expect this to be this soon, but I'm getting a lot of very positive reaction from the clinical community. Radiologists are very excited by her. Medical oncologists are excited by her. I think there's a recognition that there's simply, the system just can't support and answer the 1,001 questions that people have. And there's only so many patient nurse navigators, and they work 9 to 5 and, aren't available at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so, it's early days, of course. What I've done is I've founded a nonprofit because I want Ask Ellyn to always be private. So she collects no data. As you see, there's no registration form here. We're not keeping questions. We're not asking for personal identifiable information. And we want her always to be free. So we want her to be always free and available to anyone who needs her. And so my hope is through this foundation that I've established that we'll be able to get funding, through grants or brand partnerships or whatever that looks like, so that she's always going to be made available to the world for free. So any other questions for me at all, or any other questions you'd like to ask now that you got it going?
That actually answered my question.
I had a long conversation with her about going to Italy the other day.
I was actually wondering what the cost was going to be associated. So that was great that you actually answered, and that's fabulous that it's not.
It's really, the primary operational cost right now is really data charges, because OpenAI charges for every interaction. It's low. The costs are relatively low right now, but if we, turn her over to millions of people in the world, then they start, connecting with her on an ongoing basis, those costs will get quite steep quite fast. So, yeah, we've had just this month, we've had 5,000 interactions, and 33% of those interactions have been more than one question asked. So, and then marketing costs and everything else, right? So, in time, remind people that she's out there. I can ask her, we can ask her a non-breast cancer question, do you like Italy?
Do you like Italy?
I can type. She'll find some way to wend it back to breast cancer, but so there then this one she's actually invited. So she's invited me into a conversation, right? She likes to chat about Italy for some reason.
Do you like Italy?
I've not been, actually.
You never
Been.
But it's on my list. When you go through a diagnosis, see, there she knows all about Tuscany.
It's like a little companion that you can speak to.
Exactly. You can talk to her about anything, really. Oh, look, she's pulled in a couple of things here. So, oh, there you go.
Just curious, if you had a question about, let's say, another cancer type, would she respond?
She's going to, that's a great one. Actually, the Canadian Cancer Society, I just had a meeting with the executive director, and she asked a question about prostate cancer. So she won't know. She's not really a search engine. It is built on my lived experience. And so the focus is really around breast, but let's ask. My dream will be that we will then see, we can pair this technology up with any lived experience. So we could create siblings about, prostate or lung or any kind of cancer or women's health issue. So there she definitely has something to say. She's relating it more to her own personal experience, but she's able to understand that, what a cancer patient needs from their companion or their loved one. And so she's, within the context of what she knows, it's still valuable information, even though it doesn't go into any real detail about prostate cancer, right?
Right.
So, yeah, there's really, it's really limitless in terms of, whether it's a cancer condition or whether it's another type of chronic illness, that there's really no reason that we can't build this out in many different ways. So
no, it just seems very, very great to have this as not only just a companion to speak to whenever you're feeling low, but also just questions about your cancer, about your treatment, and the fact that it's multilingual. I think it's a very big advantage. A lot of people from all around the world can benefit from this.
Yeah, so here's a very practical question that comes up all the time in groups. right? How do I prepare for my meeting with my surgeon or my medical oncologist, or what can I expect in that meeting? So she's basically, again, telling you what I said, which is she threw herself into understanding the treatment. She brought a family friend, she brought her husband with her. I know I'm talking about myself like I'm in the third person here, but she will also sometimes she will ask, so, here's some resources. Sometimes she'll give you, like I could ask her, what question should I ask my oncologist? And she will give you, and I actually showed that to my oncologist, and my oncologist was going through saying, oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. So, I would love to see a day where people show up to their medical appointments better prepared because Ask Ellyn exists. So.
No, we do get a lot of questions from patients about how to best prepare for treatment and what can I ask my doctor about my cancer. So I think this is a really great resource. If they want quick answers, they can just go to Ask Ellyn and get some quick answers. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I've used her myself. I mean, it's very strange and very meta to think about the fact that you're talking to your own AI for advice, but I had to have a lung CT scan in July. And the intellectual me knew that it was probably going to be fine. It was just a follow-up scan, but the emotional me got scanxiety and was a little nerve-wracked about it. And I went to Ask Ellyn the night before, and she gave me these words of comfort that said, you know what, whatever happens, whatever shows up, you're strong and you're going to be able to handle it.
You see it, folks?
So yeah, it's kind of crazy that, you go to your own AI for advice.
sure. Yeah. Natasha, are you saying something? She has her mic open.
No, sorry, might just be my background noise.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for that presentation, Ellyn. It was it's a lot to learn about Ask Ellyn. I think it's has a great potential to support a lot of patients and caregivers alike all around the world, really. I do have some specific questions. Next slide for you. Okay, so you may have already answered some of those questions, but let's just start with the first one. What are some benefits of Ask Ellyn for cancer patients and caregivers? You touched upon that, but just kind of briefly mention how can patients and caregivers what's the most common way they can benefit from Ask Ellyn?
Yeah, I mean, so it's obviously the emotional comfort and the fact that there's someone that you can talk to. She's like a confessional because she shows no judgment. And so you can actually ask her or share with her even the things that you don't necessarily want to talk to your family about. Like, if someone's afraid they're going to die, there's just some things there that, may be upsetting if you talked about them openly with your family members, especially if they're going through trauma as well. And so I think that she's there for that. Obviously, as I mentioned, preparing, I mean, there's sort of real functional uses of her preparing for meetings, getting good content, good resources, knowing what's involved in a particular procedure or what that person's experience was like. And I think you'll find both in my book and in Ask Ellyn, every response is quite reassuring. I don't try and take people down dark holes, so I try to give words of comfort always. And so people, I hope, after interacting with her, will go away feeling comforted and reassured and heard, right?
Right. Second question, you did mention that you received really positive feedback and reviews. So can you mention some of those, some of the feedback that you've received?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from patients. I've had, other breast cancer patients who have used her. Their husbands seem to love her. They like to get in and ask her all kinds of questions and see if they can stump her for some reason. It just seems to be a guy thing. And then I mentioned that, I'm getting really positive clinical reaction to her. I've had great conversations with Fuji and with GE Health, and I was on a call with I did a webinar recently, and actually the recording's available for the Canadian Society for Breast Imaging, where I spoke with Dr. Jean Seeley, who's head of breast imaging at Ottawa Hospital, and Dr. Sandy Shadev, who's a medical oncologist at Ottawa Hospital, and Dr. Paula Gordon, who's with BC University Hospital, and they were, in their words, amazed and blown away by what was possible with this, which is really exciting. And then probably the most exciting reaction was I had he's the global clinical head of oncology for GE Health, who posted on LinkedIn that he was absolutely amazed by Ask Ellyn. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, it's early days, of course, but the response seems to be very, very positive.
Great. And what changes, if any, do you think need to be made to improve Ask Ellyn?
We're looking in the short term, maybe a few little small interface changes, just to maybe invite people in a little bit more, like ask her about this or that, because when people come, if they're not used to talking to a chatbot or interacting with an interface like this, without some prompting, they might not know what to ask or where to start. So that's one thing. We do want to implement as well a feedback form where people can, if she doesn't answer a question, we'll know about that. And there is some talk of implementing using AI actually to audit the questions that are being asked, just to make sure she's answering, and if there are some gaps. She's not static. I can add information into her, and she can respond in 4 seconds or less. So, when I finished my book, I was still bald and had just finished radiation. And so I've added information about, growing my hair back and chemo curls and those sorts of things. So life goes on, right? So those will be short-term changes. And then we don't know what's coming down the pike with OpenAI.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That technology is advancing so quickly. We do know that they are now demonstrating voice. So it's possible that instead of just a written response, you might actually hear my voice speaking in all these different languages, which is kind of, I don't know, cool and creepy all at the same time. So,
you did touch on the last question. So I just wanted to ask you, what potential do you see for Ask Ellyn in the future? Like what do you hope Ask Ellyn will be able to do in the future?
I mean, and if all that ever happens is Ask Ellyn, and we only ever just do breast, unfortunately, there are 2.3 million women worldwide who are diagnosed with breast cancer every year, and those numbers are not going to decline, unfortunately. And so it's a noble mission just to do that. I mean, my mission for the Lindell Project, which is the name of my nonprofit, is that no one diagnosed ever walks alone. And so if I am able to comfort and help another person feel empowered because of Ask Ellyn's existence, then I will feel very, very good about that.
Great. Okay, so those are all the questions I have for you, Ellyn. And we're pretty much close to the end of the session. So thank you so much for that great presentation about Ask Ellyn and the responses to those questions. Do you have any questions, Natasha and Huya? Any more questions for Ellyn?
I do actually have a quick question. Do you have any branded postcards? Because I'm just thinking, so I'm back to work in January, and this is definitely a really good initiative that I'm probably going to bring forward as a tool that can be used pre-diagnosis, because we're on the pre-diagnosis side. So even just patients being able to put in what should I expect for breast biopsy is helpful for our department, so they're even more prepared.
I do actually.
But do you have any?
I actually spoke at Fuji's Information Day for breast radiologists not that long ago. There's I think 400 of them that were attending. And so I have a one-pager for the clinicians. I also have a little, it's a business card that I've created. And it just has, so I have a couple of things. I have a clinician thing for you guys. And then I have a little, it's a business card that just has a QR code on it. It's very, very lightweight. Be handed out. And I also have a patient postcard. So it's a little bit bigger. It has the QR code on the one side, and then it has a little note on the back, sort of almost like a little love note from me to another patient to say, this is what I went through, and this is, I get you. this is why I created this tool. So I do have art, I have those materials available. So I know we're connected on LinkedIn, so I can, if you want to shoot me your email, I can get those all to you. I know that, that's
That
why,
would be perfect.
yeah. And I mean, even like, she'll even answer questions like, you know, I see a patch of redness on my breast. Should I be concerned? And she will encourage you to go for screening. I'm very pro screening. So
Okay.
she'll answer those early detection kind of questions too, and definitely very capably will. What does a biopsy look like? I mean, that was a question I had for my GP. I was terrified of the biopsy, by the way. That was like probably the most traumatic thing for me. And, you know, talked to a couple of friends who were like, oh, you know, it's like getting your finger slammed in the car door. And, you know, it's like pregnancy. They tell you all the horror stories. And I remember talking to my GP and asked her how painful it was. And she said, I don't know. And so, you know, that's where this lived experience starts to become very valuable, right?
Yes, for sure.
So yes, so the people that seem, the clinical audiences that seem to get her the most are the radiation techs and the radiologists, because you guys are on that front end. You're the ones that are looking at the imaging and going, by red 5, this person's got cancer, right? Like that's,
yeah, exactly.
And then you know that you're sending that person, you know, out into the world to go get in their car and drive home, and you know that they're shattered and that there's all kinds of questions. That's where she can kind of start helping right away.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have your contact information anywhere online, where if
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different places people can find me on Instagram. So I have an Instagram account called @flatplease. That's where you'll find the real me hanging out, talking about breast cancer and being flat, what that experience is like. And then I have a website called www.flatplease.com, which is where you'll find information about my book. There's a link to Ask Ellyn there. And then there's also the resources, all those links that are associated with my book. Those actually live on the Flat Please website, and are accessed through a QR code from the book. And then askellyn.ai is www.askellyn with a Y, ELLYN.ai, and you can just go and have a chat with her.
Okay, so I'll probably be sending you know, this information to patients, whoever's interested. If they want to contact you, if they want to check out Ask Ellyn by email, or even just giving them a call, something like that. So yeah, thank you. So these are the 3 ways of contacting you: Flat Please on Instagram, and the website flatplease.com, and Ask Ellyn. Yeah. Okay, great. Hey, any more questions, Tasha and Hilya?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Great.
It was great.
Natasha, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to getting you the info.
All right, so yeah, if there are no further questions, thanks so much, Ellyn, for the presentation, and you know, the questions, the response for those questions. So again, thank you for attending, Natasha, and we'll see you again in another session.
Well, I'm very appreciative to HopeSpring for giving me the opportunity. You guys were there when I needed you as someone who was newly diagnosed, and you continue to be there for us. So appreciate that very much.
Great, thanks so much. All right, any questions before we end?
No, I'm all good. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.